An artist finds herself trapped in a forest bunker with 3 strangers, all trying to shield themselves from nightly attacks by mysterious entities. While running through a forest in Western Ireland, John notices that he keeps returning to the same spot. Realizing the sun is about to set, he climbs a tree. However, a branch snaps, causing him to fall. Despite his injuries, he reaches into his bag for a weapon. Just then, he hears a voice from the woods. Seconds later, a strange creature grabs him and pulls him into a hole in the forest. Meanwhile, in Galway, an American immigrant named Mina works at a pet shop and enjoys drawing in her free time. Later that day, her boss assigns her to deliver a parrot to a zoo in Belfast the next morning. Arriving home, she stares at the bird and confides in it, mentioning it has been 15 years since her mom passed away. Mina then informs the bird of her plan to go out that night, promising to stay safe, which the parrot mimics. After wearing a wig, she heads to a bar where she meets a man. When he asks her name, she lies and introduces herself as Caroline, a ballerina. The following morning, Mina places the parrot in the backseat. Catching the bird's judgmental gaze, she explains that disguising herself the previous night is something she usually does to conceal her true identity. On the way to Belfast, she casually asks the bird what it might be running away from, but it only responds with squeaks. While at the gas station, Mina receives a voice message from Lucy, her estranged twin, updating her on their mother's memorial, which she had chosen not to attend. When Lucy urges her to call back, Mina ignores her and continues to drive. However, upon entering the forest, her phone and radio lose signal. Soon, her car breaks down, leading her to attempt to fix it. Realizing she can't do it alone, Mina takes the parrot and walks deeper into the forest to call for help. When no one answers, she returns to where she left the car, only to realize it has vanished. Feeling increasingly nervous, she names the parrot Darwin, reasoning that if they were to face their final moments there, at least he already had a name. Before night falls, a flock of birds flies in her direction, accompanied by a strong gust of wind. Spotting a white-haired woman in the distance, Mina calls out to her, but the stranger runs away. Following the older lady, the lost traveler sees her enter a bunker. The stranger then speaks urgently, telling her to join her inside if she values her life. Without hesitation, Mina rushes to the place she later learns is called the coop. After locking the door, Madeline introduces herself and her 2 companions, Sierra and Daniel. The older woman then asks Mina to join them in a line facing the 2-way mirrored wall so that the mysterious entities called the Watchers can observe them. Madeline asks Mina to step forward. As she complies, the group suddenly hears sounds outside, which the older lady explains as a welcoming gesture for their new member. Weirded out by this, Mina decides to leave the following day, convinced that the people in the coop are insane. However, while searching for her way out of the woods, she sees a creepy figure in the distance, prompting her to run. Upon reaching the edge of the woods, she realizes she has nowhere else to go. Returning to the forest, she encounters Madeline, who warns that her escape attempt might drive her mad if she isn't careful. The older woman further explains that the Watchers see them as prey. She informs Mina that by keeping her eyes open, she can learn to navigate and eventually master the forest. Madeline explains that a certain professor built forest landmarks, each about half a day's journey from the coop. The older woman advises Mina that if she stays within the boundary, she can return to the bunker before nightfall. However, crossing the line means she won't have a chance to turn back. That night, they return to the coop. While the Watchers observe them, Daniel introduces Mina to them. When Mina asks what she should do, Madeline advises her to be herself. Following this, Sierra starts playing music and dances, believing it entertains the entities. Later, Mina watches an episode of the reality dating show Lair of Love, which belongs to the professor. The next morning, Sierra walks with Mina in the woods. During their conversation, she mentions her husband, who has been missing for 6 days. She also shows her the burrow, where the entities hide during daylight. Later, Madeline explains more rules to Mina, such as not turning back to the mirror, avoiding opening the door after dark, and staying within the boundary line. That night, Mina watches another episode of the reality show. Suddenly, she hears a sound coming from behind the mirrored wall. Curious, she taps on the wall, attempting to communicate with the entities, but receives no response even when she presses her ears against it. However, just a few seconds later, the creatures tap back. The following day, Mina accompanies Daniel, who reveals that he has been in the area for 8 months and has never seen a Watcher. When they arrive at the burrow, curious Mina decides to see what the creatures look like, persuading Daniel to assist her in descending. When she reaches the end of the burrow, she discovers various items, an old newspaper, a camcorder, a plush toy, and even a bike, sending some of them up to Daniel. Just then, a strange hand with 6 fingers appears behind Mina. Feeling scared, she quickly signals Daniel to pull her up, changing her mind about seeing the creature. The duo then brings the artifacts to Madeline without revealing where they found them. Later, Daniel repairs the camcorder and connects it to the television. They play the footage they recorded earlier, and Mina proposes using the device to see what the watchers look like finally. That night, they position the camcorder outside the coop. Suddenly, they see a pair of legs on the television screen, followed by a knock on the door. When Sierra realizes it's John, Madeline intervenes, warning her not to let him in because it's still dark outside. Sensing something suspicious, Madeline turns to Mina to ask what she did earlier. In response, Mina admits she went down the burrow with Daniel's help. Madeline then scolds her for acting selfish and childish, but Mina responds that she shouldn't have been trapped in the bunker with them in the first place. Just then, Sierra interrupts their argument and reminds Madeline that her husband is still outside. As she prepares to open the door, the older lady instructs her to verify if it is John by asking him something only they would know as a couple. Following Madeline's instructions, Sierra asks John what book she's reading, but he answers that he doesn't know. In tears, she reminds him that he knows it, mentioning that they both love the book. However, John insists on requesting entry so they can talk. Nervously, Sierra asks Madeline if something is wrong with her husband, but the older lady reminds her that the Watchers spare no one. Sierra then asks John to show himself on camera. However, just as they see his face on the television, a Watcher suddenly pulls him away. Following this, the camcorder loses signal, and a portion of the mirrored wall cracks. The following day, Madeline throws the objects back into the burrow and scolds Mina for breaking the rules. Unbeknownst to them, an entity takes the bike below. Because of Madeline's statement, Mina recalls her childhood, specifically when she and her twin were on a road trip with their mother. When little Mina opened the window, her mom asked her to close it and follow the rules. Stubbornly, the girl closed it but opened it again, upsetting her mom. As her mother scolded her, Mina only mimicked her words instead of obeying her. The annoyed parent tried to close the window using the button beside her. However, her daughter placed her fingers on the window as it closed. Mina then screamed in pain, causing her mother to look back, resulting in a car accident. Months pass, and winter arrives, but Mina and the others are still in the forest. One day, after sketching the landmark in her notebook, the artist marks trees and collects flowers. On her way back to the coop, she overhears Madeline scolding Daniel. When Mina enters the bunker, she sees a devastated Sierra in front of the mirrored wall. However, she just lets her be and continues to watch the reality show and sketch on the floor to finish the forest map. Suddenly, Mina notices that Sierra has disappeared. Seeing the door open, she runs outside and finds the woman in front of the burrow, wanting to go down to be with her husband. As she intervenes, they are interrupted by Daniel's scream, only to discover that he's tying up Madeline. When they approach him, he breaks free and runs away, prompting Sierra to chase after him. As Mina unties Madeline, the older lady informs her that they should return to the coop immediately. However, as they attempt to enter the bunker, they realize that Daniel has locked the door. Soon, birds begin to appear, signaling that night is approaching. With no other choice, the duo hides behind the branches to conceal themselves from the Watchers. Meanwhile, Sierra asks Daniel why he closed the door on Madeline and Mina, prompting him to explain that things need to change. They then stand together, facing the mirrored wall. From their hiding spot, Madeline and Mina finally see what the entities look like. They transform into taller beings and head toward the mirrored wall to watch Sierra and Daniel. However, upon learning that 2 humans are missing, the Watchers suddenly rush to search for them. Once the creatures are gone, Mina and Madeline attempt to re-enter the coop. To persuade Daniel to let them in, Mina shares the story about her twin sister Lucy in the day of the accident, blaming herself and feeling like a terrible person compared to Daniel. Because of this, he unlocks the door, and Madeline and Mina rush in. Once they are complete, the group faces the mirrored wall again. As they stand together, Madeline explains that she will never lie to them. She reveals that she had previously attempted to hunt one of the entities. However, when she came into close contact with one, she felt as if she would lose her mind. The older woman described the Watcher as a version of herself but in a different form, leaner and taller. She also mentioned that the Watchers are also known as fairies. Madeline explains that the creatures observe them to copy their appearance, which is why they will never let them leave the woods. Just then, there's a knock on the door, and they hear the Watchers imitating their voices. In a panic, they quickly move the furniture to block the door. Seconds later, they discover a hatch under the carpet. Daniel opens it, revealing a passage to a secret basement. They all descend into it as the walls around them begin to crumble. Underground, they see walls filled with sketches and shelves stocked with food. Mina notices a computer and starts using it. She discovers the video diaries of Professor Rory Kilmartin, who created the coop to study the mysterious entities. In one of the videos, the professor explained how the entities simply observe. In another video, he described an encounter where a watcher appeared to him as a red-haired girl, revealing the creature's ability to transform into others. As the group watches more entries, they discover that the professor had captured one of the watchers and locked it in a cage to try and interact with it. When they reach the last video diary, the group watches as the professor advises them to follow the birds to escape the forest and use his boat on the river. He also adds an instruction, telling them to destroy everything they find and go to the university to get rid of his other notes since his research was useless. The video ends with the professor ascending to the coop. Hearing the gunshots in the footage, the group believes Rory ended himself in the watcher he captured. Following this, Sierra plays one of the professor's tapes and invites Daniel to dance. The next morning, the group leaves the coop. Following the professor's advice, they let the parrot lead them to the forest's exit. Along the way, they discover a stone marker, which Madeline explains is the fairies' prison after their conflict with humans. After this, they continue moving forward to find the way out. In the middle of their journey, Sierra begins to feel cold, but Madeline urges them to keep going. Suddenly, it starts to rain, but they persist in following Darwin. Soon, a flock of birds arrives, signaling that the Watchers will appear shortly. They run, following the birds, until they finally make it out of the forest. As they prepare the professor's boat, Sierra realizes that Daniel is missing. When she looks back, she sees him with John exiting the woods. Sierra immediately warns him that the person isn't her husband. True enough, the Watcher reveals himself and ends Daniel's life, prompting the woman to escape quickly. As they row the boat, the Watcher in John's form mimics Daniel's appearance, inciting the other fairies to do the same. The following morning, the survivors ride a bus. Sitting in the back, Mina feels relaxed and asks another passenger to turn the music up. Then, she shares her plan to visit the university so she can fulfill the professor's request. Arriving in the city, Mina returns to her apartment. After showering, she looks in the mirror and reminisces about the day her mom died, recalling how Lucy hugged their lifeless mom after they were ejected from the vehicle. Mina visits the university the following day, posing as Rory's relative. Upon entering the professor's office, she finds files, a recorder, and a scroll. There, she learns that humans and fairies coexisted peacefully, and some had mated to create halflings that could survive daylight. In another room, she discovers a tapestry depicting fairies and humans. However, shortly after that, she is suddenly taken aback by what she sees as she further examines the professor's files. Following her shocking discovery, Mina rushes to Sierra's house. She shows her a photo she found of Rory and Madeline, who turns out to be the professor's wife all along. However, Mina adds that Madeline passed away long ago, according to an obituary. Connecting the dots, she realizes that the Madeline they met in the bunker was the Watcher the professor caught, and it had transformed into a replica of his wife. Later, they wait for Madeline's arrival. Soon, a car arrives. When Mina notices Sierra getting out of the car, she quickly realizes she was talking to Madeline all along. As the real Sierra enters the house, the Watcher quickly shapeshifts into John to knock her out. Witnessing this, Mina attempts to flee, but the fairy pursues her. The entity then laments that fairies were once gods, and it all ended because of humans. Transforming into Daniel, the Watcher throws Mina against the mirror, accusing her of being untrustworthy because she knows her dark secret. Despite Mina's promise not to tell anyone, the fairy refuses to believe her but expresses gratitude to the woman for helping her finally escape from the forest. The Watcher then shifts into Madeline's form and pulls Mina along. In the backyard, the entity reveals that her name is Ashton. She shares that she can walk during the daytime, unlike the other fairies. However, she is looked down upon due to her ability. She adds that when the professor came to the forest, he promised to help her escape. However, when he attempted to shoot her, she felt betrayed, causing her to eliminate him. Seeing the entity shapeshift as the professor, Mina runs to the house to look for Sierra. However, she only sees Einryoshn disguised as her outside the door. When the Watcher proposes they end it as equals, Mina lets her duplicate inside, only for it to attempt to end her. Despite Mina's pleas to her to stop, Einryoshn implies that she wasn't worth saving because she abandoned her sister and ended her mother's life. As she struggles, Mina quickly realizes why Einryoshn differs from the other fairies. She informs her she's a halfling, meaning she's part human. When the fairy refuses to believe her, Mina points out that she exhibits human traits like jealousy, hatred, love, and forgiveness. Mina then tells Einryoshn that she can empathize with the feeling of being partly evil because of what she did to her mom. However, she encourages her to find other halflings like herself so she won't feel alone anymore. After considering Mina's words, Einryoshn changes form, revealing her wings. Before taking off, she looks at the woman one last time, hoping she's right. Once the Watcher is gone, Mina quickly attends to Sierra, hugging her tightly. The following morning, Mina reconciles with her twin sister Lucy, recounting her experiences in the forest and confessing her feeling of seeing Madeline in others. Later, Lucy's sons show their aunt a drawing of her with Darwin, whom she has chosen to keep as a pet. Outside, Madeline, disguised as a girl, looks at the apartment's window, confirming that she still watches over Mina.